Hey there, everyone. Psychic medium Josh Simons coming to you today with a video message. This will be the Monday morning message that I share with folks. But yesterday or today I'm recording this is Sunday. On Sunday, I got a message from my helping spirits. We all have helping spirits, ancestors, and other spirits that hold us and help and support us. Today, Sunday, I got a message that I should put it out on social media to ask people what sort of topics or questions that they'd like me to address. Uh, so I did that, and I got a lot of really great questions and topics. When I posted that, I was going to just pick one topic to talk about and share. I will basically dive into all of them. So it's about 5 o'clock on Sunday. If you had asked the question on that post up until about 5 o'clock on Sunday, made some notes here, I will address it. So I kind of made some shorthand notes because there was a lot of overlap. I believe that people can benefit from what I'm about to share here. So just going to use first names. Zoe asked a question: how can I strengthen or clarify my connection with loved ones that have passed on? Marcia asked, how can ancestors help us through times of unrest? Janice asked, how do I know that I'm connecting to my ancestors? And again, these are shorthand. You can go to Sunday's post and see the specific questions that they asked. I want to address Zoe's question. Zoe asked, how can I strengthen or clarify my connection with loved ones who have passed on? I'm a big believer in relationships, right? I know, because of the work that I do here as a medium, I know that our loved ones pass on. They go to the other side, the other world. Building connections, strengthening these connections with spirits are just like building connections with people. How would you go about building a relationship or strengthening a connection with a living person? I'm a big proponent of having altars, having a space that's dedicated to our beloved dead, our ancestors and our beloved dead. And these could be friends and other aunts and uncles, what have you. Doesn't necessarily need to just be parents or grandparents. Could be anybody that you would consider beloved dead. I am a big believer in having a space for that. And this is a shelf, a table, a stand, what have you, with pictures and representations of those folks, and then a place to make offerings. I really, every day of my life, I'm making offerings of, cherries and mandarins and raisins and maple syrup and honey, incense, candles, water, coffee, those types of things. And I bring them to the altar and I sit and I say, ancestors, grandmother, grandfather, specific people that I'm trying to connect with, here's an offering for you. May it strengthen you, may it nourish you, may it provide you with sustenance and joy. How does that work? I really couldn't tell you. I can tell you that it does work, that our spirits get sustenance and joy out of the things that we bring them. They love the fact that we carve out time to show them that we're thinking of them and that we're grateful for them. Zoe, build relationships. Anybody here that would want to do the same, build a relationship with your beloved dead and your helping spirits just like you would with a living person. You need a place for that. You need an interface. Sometimes you could go to a graveside or a place maybe where you've spread somebody's ashes out. Just making that intention. The reason why that's so important is because think of our beloved dead and our ancestors as helping spirits over us. And I always use the word umbrella to describe them because in my mind's eye, they're like rays of light that are over our head. Our helping spirits, our ancestors, are constantly trying to send us signals and guidance and love and helping messages. Think of them as having a phone line dialed into you. If you're not making the time to intentionally connect up to them, and you do so in front of an altar, sit in stillness, then it makes their job difficult. And stillness is not necessarily meditation. Meditation is really something specific. Stillness is just sitting in place and closing out, outward stimuli and being aware of the sensations and the impressions that you get. Everybody has a different set of filters, and this goes into Janice's question. Janice wanted to know how she knows that she's indeed connecting with her ancestors. Janice, sometimes people won't know. I will make offerings every day. I don't carve out time for stillness every day. I understand that people have different filters and different strengths and different abilities. Not everybody's a medium. Do everybody have mediumistic qualities? Maybe. I think that to a certain extent, everybody can be their own medium to family members of blood. I do believe that. I also believe that, being a medium for the general public is something that only a few people are indeed capable of. And again, that's the relationship that person has with their helping spirits. There's a whole ton of trauma that people can immerse themselves in, like I do whenever I step into this role. So, altars, offerings, stillness. How do you know that you're connecting? You have to be really paying attention to those inner signals, those subtle influences. It's not always going to be the bright, it's not going to be the owl or the cardinal that lands on your windowsill. It's going to be those inner knowings, those sensations, those impressions, those feelings that you get. I do know Janice, and Janice, what I can tell you is it feels very much like when I talk about stillness and just sitting in silence in front of, excuse me, your altar, it feels like you don't do that, and I might be wrong. And if you want some further guidance, reach out to me. But it really feels like you have to be aware of those subtle influences. You have to shut out the external stimuli that you would be receiving. Excuse me, I'm gonna have some tea here. Marcia, how can ancestors help us through times of unrest? That's a great question, and these are all great questions, but that question, specifically, is one that I have a great answer for. We do have times of unrest. We do have a pandemic. We do have political unrest happening all around us. Scary times. They really are scary times. I will tell you what I did when COVID first happened, right? When COVID kind of really hit America, and it was, I believe March. Weirdly enough, it was like March 13th, Friday the 13th, when everything, restaurants started to shut down, schools started to go virtual. That's when we really had to shift. Everybody had a certain amount of anxiety and worry about them, right? They were like, stuff's happening. What do I do? What's going on? Everybody rightfully so had a certain level of fear. Well, most people had a certain level of fear. What I did, because, I'm receptive to that. It's hard to be an empathetic human and not feel the worry and the stress of others around, right? So what I did is I went to the altar that I have a picture of my grandmother at, and I did indeed find times of stillness with her. My mother's mother, was really the only grandparent that I was close to that I got a chance to really know, and she was indeed the strongest, toughest, wisest woman that I knew. I'm very grateful for having her as my grandmother. I sat down at that altar and I spoke to my grandmother, and I thought to myself, what would she do? And my gram, being that she had an incredibly difficult life, raised 4 kids, had her own business, farmed, all of that. What my grandmother would have done had COVID happened, say she had 4 little kids running around and COVID had happened, My grandmother, I do not believe, would have stressed. She wouldn't have become anxious. There's a level of practicality that our ancestors can lend us. And this goes into Marsha's question very specifically. How can our ancestors help us through times of unrest? Think of their stories. Think of all of the ancestors that come before us that would have gone through times of unrest, right? These ancestors went through famines and plagues and wars and migrations and awful things that, comparatively speaking, the COVID and the political unrest that we have now, really not much compared to what a lot of our ancestors went through. And that's not to diminish or trivialize what we have going on today. It's just to say that we have ancestors that have gone through far worse. Now, my gram would have been really practical. She would have said, here's a threat to my family, my community, myself. What can I do to minimize it from a practical level? Our ancestors, generally speaking, would have gotten right to work, right? And they would have been practical on their emotional compartmentalization, I think is a good way to put it. If you have strife happening at the US Capitol, right, like we've seen recently, you can be upset about it, you can be emotional about it. You've got to also have a certain level of emotional intelligence here in practicality, in the way that, okay, we have stuff going on in the US Capitol. It could greatly affect us. Spirits and our ancestors were greatly practical in the way that, can I put my hands on it? Can I affect change in a tangible way? So in these times of unrest, right, we acknowledge it, we allow those emotions to flow through us, we don't bottle them up. And yet, if those things bring strife or chaos to our front steps, then we get to work. Then we put our hands on it and we do what we can to affect it. So there's a certain level of practicality. Marsha, I would suggest, and anybody else, I would really suggest to learn the stories of your ancestors, even from a historical perspective. You don't need to know their specific stories, but think about what people went through and think about how they had to keep their heads about them or they would suffer from that. So that's my recommendation there, Marsha. Think of their stories and in the way that you honor them, pull their strength into you. Because when I sat down with my grandmother and I was like, okay, what would Grandma have done? Well, she would have identified a threat, she would have minimized its impact on her family and her community, and she wouldn't have lost her mind about it. And that's what I did. I said, okay, what can I do? I'll wear gloves when necessary. I'll mask up when necessary. I'll use sanitizer. I'll social distance. I'll keep things, I can affect a certain amount of change in my life and in my family's life to keep us safe, right? From a sensible, practical standpoint. And boy, do I wish there were other people that could just do that in this world. And that's good advice for anything, right? If it's something that you can't change and put your hands on, then reject it. Not reject it necessarily, but understand what you can affect and what you can't affect. So please do that. The next three pieces of this, Vicky, had talked about the death of a loved one and how they weren't speaking at that time. This is where empathy comes in, Vicky. There's no better perspective shift than death. And I'm a big believer in, if you have bullshit with people, fix it, right? I know I've said in a couple of these videos, and I'm a big believer that if you would be destroyed by somebody passing away and you would regret the things that you said or didn't say to them, fix it while you have the chance. Now, some people don't have that chance, right? While that person's alive. Vicky, I know, is somebody who absolutely does believe that our spirits carry on. And when they carry on, that provides a chance for communication, right? That provides a chance for relationship. Please, 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 please. Speak to them, Vicky. Speak to them. Call them in. Light a candle in their honor. Use their full name. Call them in and pour your heart out, because they'll hear you. I can tell you that if it wasn't that big of a deal, right, in life, and it was just kind of stupid stuff or not inconsequential stuff, in death, it's not that big of a deal. Because again, there's no perspective shift greater than losing our life. And that's why I talk about regret a lot. How can we minimize regret? Sometimes we have these things that happen, Vicky, that we can't. My suggestion to you is, as best you can, call that person into you. If they were a loved one, they carry on. You can get their attention if they're not already around you all the time. From my perspective, as a medium, there are instances where spirits feel frustrated. They feel like there are things that a person could do in their life to take care of themselves or the lives of others. I would have you, as best you can, call them. You may not, receive any sort of tangible signs, but you've made the apology. You've opened up that dialogue, and that's something that you should consider doing. Making the time, going to their favorite spot, finding time to sit with them and speak with them. In general, I am a big believer in that we should have a healthy relationship to our dead. You should talk to them, not in the middle of a grocery store, but talk to them. They carry on. They can hear you, they can feel you, they can see you. Offer up an apology, offer up that sadness, and then move on from that as best you can. Don't sit in that sadness. Don't sit in that regret. Move on as you would have them move on if your roles were reversed. Melissa asked why it seems nobody wants anything to do with their parents, and then their parents pass on, and then they're very much, feel sorry for me. Well, Melissa, I can tell you that there's lots of people who have stuff to do with their parents. I try to see my parents and tell them I love them as often as I can. There are people that don't, right? There are people that take their parents, their siblings, their aunts and uncles, their grandparents for granted. Because the fact of the matter is, in this world, there are selfish people. And in this world, there are people that are simply self-absorbed, self-centered, self-concerned, have no interest in seeing anything past their own nose. Weirdly, Melissa, I had a reading very recently where a person had passed and was cremated, and the person who was receiving the reading wanted to know, well, we have somebody in the family that's making a big deal out of getting some of the ashes, and they didn't really care for the person while they were alive. And this person, and I knew this because the spirit passed this message through, this person became a drama queen. It's an opportunity for them to create drama and noise around themselves and make it, I'm sure that this isn't the only way they do it. This is just an excuse for them to do it in that moment. They make it all about themselves, right? It's like their show, right? It's like, it's the Gladys show or the Doris show or the what have you show. In those instances, Melissa, that's just human nature. Humans will see an opportunity like that where they can get everybody to say, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me. I personally don't have anybody to, anything to do with people like that in my life. If you're somebody that is attention seeking in that way, I'm going to remove you from my life because I don't have time for that. If somebody is in genuine need of support and help, I'll be there for them. But it's easy, and I know that you can imagine this, it's easy to see how people become drama queens or kings around these types of instances and need to make it all about themselves. It's all about me. I'm suffering. Oh, poor, poor me. I get it. I've seen it a lot. There's ultimately, you're not going to change them. There's nothing you can do about it, which means you minimize your exposure to it, right? Sure, it'll probably eat you up from the inside, but again, we go back to the idea of practicality. What is practical about holding on to that resentment and that anger? Can you do anything tangibly in that situation? Then do it. get to work. But if you can't do anything tangibly in that situation, then you have to understand what you can and can't do. Minimize your exposure to it, move on, and carry on in a way that your loved ones would know honor. So please, when it comes to those drama kings and queens, minimize your exposure. Don't allow your frustration with them to eat themselves up, because rest assured, any other reasonable person in their world are going to see them for who they are. So don't take it upon yourself as a mission to don't take it upon yourself as a mission to right the situation or create balance there, because it's probably something you can't do. Again, how can you practically put your hands on something and cause tangible change? All right. So the last one is from Jen. And Jen was talking about death and the moment of death, and how her father, when he was passing away, he was in a coma, and yet he would wake up and perhaps whisper and look at people, coma or not. When we're on the brink of death, when we're in that space, we do tangibly see our ancestors and our helping spirits helping us move on. There is a transition there. The idea of living well and dying well. You know, when death comes to us suddenly, you know, car accident, things like that, they weren't expecting it. There's a certain process by which we have to heal from those sorts of things. When you have a chance to prepare mentally and emotionally for your death and your passing, that helps us on the other side in that transitional period. Was your father seeing people? I would almost guarantee it. Could you prove that? No. I remember when my grandmother was passing, oh boy, she held on for a long time. There were things happening to her medically that her doctors couldn't explain. You know, they would do, she had CAT scans and MRIs and go, what we're seeing here, this person should be dead. And my grandmother lasted a really long time. That spoke to her vitality and her health. And yet at the end, in the last week or so, she was starting to mention relatives and people that she hadn't talked about for years since she was a kid. She would be talking about uncles and aunts and those things that people hadn't heard of for years. There was no reason. She hadn't been going through photos. She hadn't been going through anything to kind of bring those memories up. So yeah, death is a transition, and when we have those chances to prepare for it, our helping spirits know it, and when we have started to step outside of ourselves a little bit, our helping spirits will be there to catch us, to support us, to hold us in a way that we can be supported in that transitional time. I hope that answers your question, Jen. Tell me, folks that have asked these questions, tell me. I hope they have. We're at 23 minutes at this video, and for all of that, I want to, I'm just getting the message that I need to do this again, honoring the connection to our helping spirits and knowing what to do. I'm going to pull a tarot card and talk about some energies that we can all benefit from. People that have no interest in death or these types of topics that we have covered so far. I just want to do kind of a collective little reading with some advice and some insight into our future week and what's going on. So the way I do it is, I'm just going to shuffle my cards 3 times, and then I just cut the deck. And the card on top is the card that folks need to see right now. So here we go. All right. So the card is the Ten of Cups. So 10s in tarot mean resolution. They mean, completion. A cycle has come to an end. The Ten of Cups is one of the best cards that you can see in the way that it speaks of celebration, family, home, happiness. This Rainbow of Cups, right? This is delight, bliss, if you will, on a familial level. I don't like to talk politics, right? It tends to alienate folks, and on my own social media, I gave up talking politics a long time ago because, generally speaking, we're preaching to the choir or screaming at the deaf, right? We're talking to people that already agree with what we feel, or people that aren't going to hear it because they're so set in their ways. Generally speaking, and that's not to say that you can't reach out to people and affect change in a positive, because I've seen it happen, right? I just don't have the capacity for it. I'm not somebody that's going to be on a soapbox in social media. I have my own personal views, my own personal principles. I don't shove them down people's throats unless I feel the situation is warranted. So if you're somebody that goes on and on and on and on social media in a political way, and that's a good and therapeutic thing for you, please do so. If you don't, then, no judgment here. I'm not somebody that does. But I want to tell you, there's a sense of completion here. And I asked this question about this upcoming week. This upcoming week, is there anything drawing to an end that we should celebrate? And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave it at that because the cards spoke. If you're somebody who can't receive that message and you need to move away from me and what I have to offer, then so be it. If you're somebody who's picking up on what I'm laying down and you understand exactly what the cups here are saying, we have a completion coming to us this week. That's a reason to celebrate. So there you go. I honor the messages, the cards, the runes, and everything bring me. And I honor the helping spirits that I have around me by bringing this message. This was a long video, so thank you for this. Thank you for sticking with me. I can't say that I'll do this every week. Probably won't. But I do kind of want to open up this dialogue to folks. I'm blessed to have the gifts that I do, and I don't say that from a place of ego. I'm very blessed to have what I do, and I want to use them as much as I can for the betterment of everybody that can benefit from them. So thank you for this. 10 of Cups this week. Again, very thankful for anybody that is watching this, anybody that's accompanying me and my husband on our journey. If you've helped us in any way, supported us in any way, and you believe in what we do, then every time we bring a bit of peace or balance or clarity to the lives of others, in the way that you've supported us, you are also responsible for us bringing that to others. So I can't thank you enough. That's my gratitude to you. I really appreciate it. Have a hell of a week. Isaac and I are on vacation. We have a week's vacation we haven't had in years. I've owned my own businesses since 2013, and other than taking some random vacations to places and having that space of time away from work, we haven't had a week off in years. So we're going to have it, we're going to enjoy it, and I can only ask that you make the best of your life and this week. So until next week, thank you so much.